Yesterday, I suggested that the third of H. Richard Niebuhr's types of Christian answer to the Christ culture dilemma, what he calls the Christ above culture type, can be likened to a great cathedral built within the walls of a small medieval European town. Today, I want to suggest a different image, an image that can help us understand this kind of Christianity, especially when it comes to the question of human knowledge and understanding versus divine wisdom. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. I'm a bit of a train enthusiast. Not so much that I routinely go out looking for trains. I'm not a train spotter, and I wouldn't call myself a rail fan the way some would. But whenever I see a train, I'm immediately drawn to it. I love to watch them go by, count cars, think about where they've been and where they're going, what they're hauling. This is quite possibly a holdover from my childhood when we would visit family in my mother's hometown of Marlin, Texas. In that little town, there's a rail line that goes right through the middle of town. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure where most of the trains originate, let alone where they're headed, but there are enough of them that go through town each day and even into the night that the blare of train horns is a pretty constant companion to life in that little town. Occasional visitors can find it pretty distracting, especially at night, but since I've been listening to them since I was a small child, and since being in Marlin growing up represented a happy place for me, the sound of trains rumbling through town is a happy sound for me. Now, in the old days, there were actually two sets of train tracks running through town. There was the main line, the one that's still there, and then there was a branch line that split off a couple of miles south of town and then went right down the middle of town, in fact, right down the middle of one of the main streets, right in the middle of Ward Street, before running past the old cotton compress warehouses where they would stop to pick up cotton before merging back onto the main line on the north side of town. Well, the cotton business dried up in Marlin decades ago, and the railroad removed most of the rail, though there are still a few stretches of rail still in place, and you can definitely see where the rails were on Ward Street. So forgive my digression into childhood nostalgia, but there is a point to all of this, and that is to say, the type of Christianity Niebuhr calls Christ above culture has a distinctive way of understanding the relationship between divine truth and human knowledge. They are like parallel railroad tracks, and specifically like the relationship between a main line and a branch line, like the one that used to run down the middle of Ward Street in Marlin. If you never paid attention to the main line, but only watched trains come down the branch line to pick up loads of cotton, you'd still have a pretty good idea about how trains operated. There would still be an engine. There would still be rail cars, and there would be rails on which the trains traveled. But the branch line was limited. It had a beginning and an end. It ran more or less parallel to the main line, but it was limited in scope. From the branch line, you wouldn't necessarily know where the loads of cotton were heading. As Niebuhr describes the above culture type, he describes it as understanding that human reason and the divine mind, while separate, are actually parallel to one another. Human reason is a reflection of divine wisdom, but in itself is incomplete. Human reason can tell us a lot about truth and even about God, but it can't tell us everything. Human reason can tell us things like murder, theft, and other crimes are inherently wrong. One doesn't need a Bible to understand these things. Every culture mostly understands the same things about right and wrong. People can also understand that there is a God, even if they don't know a lot about God. John Calvin, for instance, asserted that practically everyone has some understanding of God simply by observing the wonders of creation, and from there contemplating the one who created it all. But like a branch line, human reason only gets you so far. It is parallel to divine wisdom, but divine wisdom extends far beyond the limits of human reason. For example, human reason understands that there is such a thing as God, but only through divine revelation do we come to know who God really is. Reason knows there is a God. Revelation tells us of the triune God, whom we know as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So the above culture type resolves the tension between divine wisdom and human reason by envisioning the two as a set of parallel ways of knowing, parallel ways of understanding, one which, though complementary to divine wisdom, is nevertheless limited. This is quite different from radical Christianity on the one hand, which sees human reason as hopelessly flawed. And it's different, on the other hand, from culture Christianity by asserting that divine wisdom is higher and superior to human wisdom. Is it the only way to resolve the tension between divine wisdom and human reason? No, but it is one, and it's one that has proved remarkably durable through the centuries. It's a pretty good way of understanding things. When we return tomorrow, we'll take a look at the second of Niebuhr's median types, what he calls Christ and culture in paradox. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.